Okay, so the most important part before we actually start cooking is washing our hands. So I'm going to do that. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're going to start with the onions. What we're going to do is we're going to take a small cooking knife, vegetable knife, very sharp. Be careful with your fingers. We're going to take the end of the onion off to make it a little bit easier to start peeling. And we're going to peel them until all the skin, outer skin, and just the inside layer of the first skin that we come to, the white layer. Usually that's quite soft and it doesn't cook particularly well. It goes all gooey and horrible. So we take that first layer off as well to make sure. Make sure that the tail's still on. Okay. If you do this, hopefully this prevents some of the chemicals that are released by the onions to help stop you crying. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to cut the onion straight in half. Okay. And then we're going to use the lines on the onion and we're going to cut down along those lines, and we're going to stop right at the tail, right before we get to the end of the tail. I'm going to slice all the way down. Throughout the whole onion. And so we've got cuts all the way along there, but still keeping this tail on here. Then we're going to cut across the onion to form little cubes. Take the tail, and so that's how we dice an onion. Okay, so when we've finished dicing our onion, it should look something like this. Okay, lots of little squares. Just break them up like that. This will be the first thing that will hit the pan, along with the garlic. So we've got a whole bowl of garlic there, and we just need about 1 or 2 cloves. Depending on how much garlic you like in your curries, or how much garlic you like in your food. For me, personally, I do quite like a lot of garlic in my food. It's an essential part of any curry. So let's get going with that. Same thing again, cut the tail off at the top. And that should open the bulb up. And then take one of the cloves out. Like that. And what we're going to do is the same again, similar to the onion. We're going to take the tail off the top and carefully peel the skin around the garlic. Take a garlic crusher, garlic press, place our clove of garlic in there, and crush it up there. Use the back of the knife just to draw along the crusher so that you've got some garlic there. Now we're going to start heating some oil on the pan. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to take some chilies. These are some fresh chilies that we've got here, and we're going to slice them up and cut them up really small so that we can use these. So exactly the same kind of process. Take the knife and just cut along the chilies into little slices. If you like your curries really hot, then the seeds in the inside, include them and put them into the curry as well. If you don't like it as hot, take the seeds out and remove them and then throw them in the bin. So we're going to take the chili and do exactly that, just cut straight along. Okay. There are various different chilies out there that you can use. There are different spices, different selections of chilies you can get. Say if you like your curries really hot, you can use Scotch bonnet. But there are loads of different chilies out there that you can try and use, various different heats. Okay, so we're going to cut off the chilies really quite small, so that they fry off nicely. You don't always have to use fresh chilies for curries. I find using fresh vegetables often adds a lot of fresh taste into the food, but you can always use crushed chilies, and also when you're cooking a curry, a little bit of chili powder as well is essential. Okay, hopefully our pan will be nice and hot now, so let's add some vegetables into the pan. Okay, so our pan is nice and hot now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our knife, we're going to add some onions and garlic into the pan. Along with some of the fresh chilies that we've just chopped as well. We're going to get a spatula and we're just going to fry them off. Okay, so while our onions, our garlic and our chilies are in there frying, we're going to add some spices to our bases, to our sauce. So we're going to add a teaspoon or so of chili powder. Also, we're going to add some paprika. I'd say about 2 tablespoons would probably suffice. Add it for a nice bit of smoky flavour. Okay, so I've got some turmeric as well. Going to add probably another 2 tablespoons worth of turmeric in there. Just for a little bit of interest, I'm going to add a little bit of Chinese spice as well, just to give it maybe some more interesting flavours. Take a spatula and we're going to mix those in. so that the spices fry off along with the onions, the chilies and some of the garlic. Okay, so whilst that's frying, we're going to prep some more of the vegetables. Okay, so whilst they're frying, we're going to add some bell peppers in there as well. So I've got a different assortment of colours. We've got different sweetnesses. Each pepper has a slightly different flavour, depending on how long it's been left, how ripe it is, and what colour it is. Basically, the peppers change colour throughout the ripening process. So all peppers actually start off being green, and then slowly over time they actually change colour into the red peppers that are quite famous. And so we're going to take our peppers, and what we're going to do is we're going to do, this one's already come cut, we're going to cut out the centre section very carefully, so the stem and the seeds on the inside. Okay, some people like dicing their peppers. For this, because we're making a curry, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to dice it down as well. So we're going to cut pepper in half like that. Make sure that you're washing the vegetables as you go throughout. Always wash your vegetables. And you're going to press down on the half pepper and slice across the length of it. Okay, and so that's the situ like that. What we're going to do is you're just going to turn it quickly and then cut along it the other way. So we're dicing them. And we're going to do this with a couple of the peppers. Not only adds a little bit different kind of flavours in there, but a little bit more colour to it as well. Okay, so after we've diced some of our peppers, what we're going to do is we're going to add some mushrooms into this as well. So take a few mushrooms, if you like mushrooms. I'm quite a big fan. And I'm just going to wash them off, make sure that there is no soil left on them. This is why we wash our vegetables, because the soil contains bacteria, and it can make you poorly. Like anything, make sure it's washed and it's safe to eat. So we're just going to gently rub them all over, just to make sure that there's no soil left on them. Now, good things for curries are little button mushrooms. I'm not using those today. I'm just using normal standard mushrooms. What you can do, depending on how you like them. I particularly like them sliced, but most people in a curry would cut them into quarters. So you have little quarter mushrooms like that. If you're using button mushrooms, then I would suggest to either cut them in half or leave them whole, and they soak up a lot of the flavour that are in the curry sauce and the spices. Also, bulk it out slightly as well. If you're cooking for a larger amount of people, it's a good way to be able to fill it out instead of using meat. We're going to roughly chop the mushrooms up into sort of smaller chunks. So they look a bit like that. Okay, and we're going to add them in along with the onions, the peppers, the chili peppers, the garlic and spices. So we're going to add them in as well. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add some chicken into our curry. So we're going to take a chicken. What I've done for me, for convenience, is I've actually roasted my chicken beforehand, just so that I could use a little bit and put a bit aside. You could, if you wanted to, cut the chicken up and then fry it in spices and in all the rest of it as you're going, so you're actually doing it fresh. On this occasion, like I said, I've oven cooked my chicken beforehand, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it and I'm going to add it to my curry. I'm going to take parts of the leg and the breast and dice them up and throw them in there. Okay, so what I've done is just cut part of my chicken in half. I'm going to take some of the breast meat here, and I'm just going to cut along it and cube it up so that I can throw it in. Just cutting it into kind of cubes, around sort of 2 centimetres square, about 1 inch square. Nice sort of big chunky pieces of chicken. They will get smaller as they go in there, especially if it's a fresh chicken. If you're using cooked, it won't get as small. That's why I'm keeping the pieces quite big. So just going to cut big chunks of chicken out of there and add that to the curry. Okay, so after cutting our chicken, whether it be fresh or cooked, you've got to wash your hands. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our chicken now, and we're just going to add that in to there. And add that in with all of the cut up vegetables and spices. Okay, so what you're going to have to do is you're going to perhaps add a little bit more oil, some salt, some pepper. Just generally. About a teaspoon of salt, maybe a little bit more. I like pepper. Some people do, some people don't. Add a little bit of pepper whilst it's all cooking down. And so this just wants to be turned over because the chicken's already cooked. It doesn't need as long in there, as some of the flavours won't take as well as if it was a fresh chicken. So I'm just going to quickly cover it so that the chicken is covered in spices and oil, and then what I'm going to do with that is add it to a saucepan. Okay, so after the chicken is completely covered in spices and oil and coated all across, you can see that it's looking lovely. Plenty of colours, lots of lovely smells, spices. You can smell the garlic and the chilli. I'm going to add it to a saucepan so that we can start simmering down and add in some chopped tomatoes. I've got tomato passata, which is really helpful as well, and I'm going to add some cherry pine tomatoes, which I've got there, which are really nice as well. Like I said, similar idea to the button mushrooms. If you add the button mushrooms, they give a real kind of wholesome life to the meal. It's really nice. With these cherry tomatoes, you can let them simmer down, and they bring a lot of juice and a lot of flavour to the meal itself. You don't have to use fresh tomatoes in cooking. You can just use chopped tomatoes. Like I say, I use passata, which is sieved tomatoes, essentially. and that also brings a lot of flavour to the sauce. It is a key ingredient to any curry, are tomatoes. So we're going to add that to the saucepan, add some tomatoes, and give it a mix up and see where we are from there. Okay, so now that we've got all of our ingredients in a saucepan, you could start like this without using a frying pan if you had a larger saucepan. You could just fry it at the bottom and then add the ingredients and do one pot cooking. The only reason why I'm doing this is it's slightly easier for me, so that I can show you the ingredients and so that I can fry off all the spices at the same time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add some chopped tomatoes and some passata into that, and some fresh tomatoes as well. Okay. Okay, so after adding the tomatoes into our curry, we're going to add some curry powder as well as a little bit of salt and some hot water, some boiling hot water. And what we're going to do is we're going to get it really hot. We're going to stir it up, and we're going to sling the lid on and let it real settle in. Let all the flavours from the spices and from the vegetables really sink into the chicken, and hopefully it will taste really, really good. Okay, so I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons of curry powder to our curry, along with some salt as well. Just a little bit more salt, another half tablespoon or so, and I'm going to get a spoon, and we're going to stir that right in. We're going to let that boil up slowly. We're going to turn down the heat slightly. And we're going to let that warm right through until it starts to boil and you can see the water coming out from the tomatoes. Okay, so after adding some curry powder, we're going to give it a good stir. So at the beginning, when I was adding some vegetables and some garlic and frying them up as well, one of the spices that you could do, or one of the things you can include, is the curry powder. It's also garam masala, and you can add those spices in at the beginning, add them to the oil and the garlic and the other spices as well, and so that the flavour from the garam masala goes all the way through the curry. I'm not using it on this particular occasion, simply because I haven't got any here. It is also very nice to add to different curries. And so after giving that a good stir, what we're going to do is we're going to pop the lid on, we're going to turn down the heat and just literally let it simmer for the next hour or so. Also, what we're going to do is we're going to add some cherry vine tomatoes, to our curry as well. Going to take off the tails and just pop them in whole. And what that will do is they will boil down. They will absorb some of the flavour from the spices and from the garlic and from the onions. And they're going to bring a real juice to this curry. Adding fresh tomatoes always does that. It brings that kind of sensation, that juiciness to it. And after a little while of boiling them down, they'll become really juicy and they'll be lovely when you plate them up. Okay, so with our curry simmering down now, collecting all those flavours and boiling through, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some potatoes, I'm going to peel them, I'm going to hard-boil them down so they're a little bit softer, and then I'm going to try to make some Bombay potatoes, so that can go alongside our curry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a quick wash. Same kind of thing as mushrooms, just rubbing your hand all over the potato to make sure that there's no soil left on them. Okay. And then I'm going to take a potato peeler and I'm going to peel them all over and cut them into wedges. So cut them along the length of the potatoes in half, and then we're going to get them covered in oil and some spices and a little bit of parsley and salt and pepper, and we're going to fry them. Okay, so to peel our potato, we're going to take the potato peeler and the potato, and instead of going like this, hacking away at a potato, what we're going to do is we're going to take it in our hand, we're going to use our thumb as a guide, we're going to put our index finger along the top of the potato, and then we're going to move it back towards us so that we're not flying around the kitchen with a sharp potato peeler, and we're going to just move it up the length of the potato. We're just going to move it all the way up the length of the potato to try to get as much of the skin off as we can. Potatoes got little indents like that, they're called eyes. I'm going to take the top of the potato peeler and just dig around some of those. Put them in. And we're just going to, like I say, just use that method, pulling from our index finger back towards our thumb, so that we're keeping the potato peeler close to us, so that we're not going to injure anyone if anyone else is in the room, or if anyone else is in the kitchen with you. And we're just going to go all the way around the potato until there is no more skin left. Okay, just making sure that there is none of that skin left on. Okay, we're going to quickly wash it just to make sure that we can see that there's no skin left back on the potato. Okay, and then we're going to take our knife . We're going to make sure that hands are dry and that the potatoes reasonably dry as well. So what we can do is pat the potato down with a little bit of tissue, if need be. And this just helps to make sure that it doesn't slip out of your hands when you're handling a knife. The last thing you want is to catch one of your fingers, especially with one of these really sharp vegetable knives. And like I said, you're just going to cut along the length of the potato, like that, so you've got half potato. And then we're going to cut it perhaps one or two more times, and try and get some wedge-like shapes, a bit like that. And we're going to repeat that process along and try and get a load more wedges made up, so that all the pieces of potato look roughly like that. With some of the smaller ones, obviously they'll be cut in half, and they will look like smaller, dumpier wedges. Okay, so once we've peeled and washed our potatoes and cut them up into wedges of so size, got a load there, and what we're going to do is we're going to add them to a boiling pan of water, and we're going to parboil them. With wedges about this size, they shouldn't need long, probably about 5 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes on really high temperature boiling should just soften them down. Like I said, in between 5 and 10 minutes, just to make them a little bit softer, so that when they fry, you should be able to have a nice crispy outside, and it should be really nice and soft and fluffy on the inside. So I'm going to add them to a pan of boiling water, just waiting for the kettle to boil, and so you can soften them down, and hopefully we can coat them before we fry them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to boil down our potato wedge pieces to soften them up. We're going to get some spices and some herbs ready. So what I'm going to do is use some salt, some ground black pepper, and some chicken seasoning. This chicken seasoning has got some paprika in it, so it's going to have some smokiness in there as well. It's also got some cayenne pepper in there as well, and we're going to use some parsley. And what we're going to do is, after our potato wedges are parboiled, we're going to make sure that they're dried off, and we're going to roll them around in oil and herbs and spices, and then we're going to shallow fry them. You can use a deep fat fryer if you were cooking for a group of people, a large group of people. You would parboil them, roll them around in some of the herbs and spices, salt and pepper, and then chuck them in the deep fat fryer, and probably wait about 5 to 10 minutes or so. Let them get really crispy on the outside. Take them out. Lay them on some tissue paper. Make sure they're dry, and hopefully you should have a really nice potato wedge, Bombay potato wedge. Okay, so what we're going to do, whilst we're waiting for our potatoes to parboil, we're going to just check on our curry, give it a couple of stirs, just make sure that it's all mixing round, see the consistency of it. Hopefully you should see some of the oil in there. It should be quite oily. You should be able to see some of the layer of the oil sit on top. Give it a good stir around, perhaps add a little bit more salt to it, and just stir that in. Hopefully there shouldn't be so much water. You should have, it should still be really nice and wet. It shouldn't have dried out. If it has dried out, all I can say is add a little bit more boiling water to it. On this occasion it hasn't. It's actually quite nice. The consistency is right. Like I said, if it does seem dry to you, don't be afraid to add a little bit of boiling water, so that it boils all of that lovely flavour, that intense spice into the chicken and into the vegetables. And turn the lid and make sure that that's simmering, and just leave it there to rest for perhaps another half an hour, depending on how far along you are in. Usually I would say it takes about an hour to really boil down a curry, so that the chicken is nice and tender, and so you've got all those flavours in there. Okay, so now that our potatoes are boiled, or parboiled, for about five or so minutes, we're going to strain them out. What we're going to do is, we're not going to wash them off, we're going to keep some of the starch there that are in the potatoes, so that it helps stick some of the herbs and spices onto them. So we're going to use a colander, and we're just going to drain them off. Make sure all the water is out of there. Okay. And we're going to add them to a mixing bowl. Okay. And what we're going to add some oil. It doesn't really matter which oil. I'm using olive oil. And we're going to add some salt, some pepper, we're going to add some dried parsley. You can use fresh parsley. I'm just using dried parsley today. I don't have any. And I'm going to add some of this chicken seasoning. Like I said, you don't have to use chicken seasoning. You can use paprika on its own, as well as some cayenne pepper. And we're just going to cover them. So, use a bit of paprika as well if you want. Add some turmeric, just to give it that smokiness and that golden look. And we're just going to use our hands and we're just going to roll the potatoes around in the oil. Mind out, because they'll still be hot. Okay, and what we're going to do, just going to add a little bit more parsley today. Make sure that they are well coated all the way through, so that you've got parsley and you've got herbs and spices all over the potatoes, and that they are all covered in oil. You'll need to use plenty of oil. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the frying pan, we're going to heat up some more oil in there, and we're going to shallow fry them. Like I said, you can do exactly the same, but you can use a deep fat fryer. And like I said, if you're cooking for a group, that would be great. You know, big amounts, just drop them straight into the fryer, just as what you would do with your chips, and just deep fat fry them for about 5 to 10 minutes. If you shallow fry them, you might need to do it for a little bit less time. That really depends on how many potatoes that you're doing. And so I'm going to heat up the frying pan. Okay, so while I'm heating some oil in the frying pan, what I'm going to do is I am going to boil the kettle. I am going to get some rice out. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook some rice. First and foremost, we're going to take a cup. We're going to take a cup. Usually varies in different amounts depending on how much rice you're doing for different people. Usually it is around 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water. Usually I put in twice as much to allow for it to boil out properly. So usually it's 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water, or 1.5 cups of water. And so we're going to take some rice and we're going to measure it out into our cup. I'm no great expert at cooking rice. It's not exactly my forte. Hopefully it won't turn out too starchy. One of the ways you can avoid doing this is by using a sieve and by using boiling water. And what we're going to do is just use the boiling water to take out some of the starch that's in that rice. You can use a little bit of salt as well. Salt's very helpful for washing starch out of food. whether that be potatoes or rice. I'm just going to continue using that. Now, that immediately starts the cooking progress when you're using hot water. So what we're going to do is we're going to chuck it straight in the saucepan. And almost immediately, what we're going to do is take cold water and put... I'm going to go for twice the amount. You can go for a cup and a half. That really depends. It varies, like I say, on how much rice you're doing. And I'm going to put that on to boil as well. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. On this occasion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a cheese method. I'm going to add a little bit of butter, just to get some flavour running through there. It's not the healthiest. It's not exactly in line with traditional Indian cooking or with Asian cooking, but I'm gonna put a little bit of butter in there just to help separate it through. A little bit of a cheese method, make sure that it doesn't stick too much together. Hopefully that should help. And I'm just going to leave that there to boil through. Okay, so now our frying pan should be really hot. I'm just going to add these potatoes. Hopefully they shouldn't be, oil shouldn't be too hot. Potatoes will start sticking. Like I said, use plenty of oil to make sure that it isn't going to stick to the bottom of the pan if you're shallow frying them. If you're deep frying, obviously you're going to have lots of oil in there. Hopefully they shouldn't stick together. You may have to check halfway through cooking if you're cooking in a deep fat fryer to make sure they're not going to stick together. Let's get some of that, those herbs and spices in there. Okay. Alright, so now we're set. So our curry is now simmering. Our potatoes are now shallow frying and our rice is on. So we're getting to the end of our cooking process. Just check on the curry, check the consistency of it, give it a stir. Hopefully you should see that all the oil and the water will separate. There should be a layer of oil around the top in some of these curries. It adds a lot of flavour to the curry. It adds a lot of depth. There should be a lot of flavour within that oil. If there is still too much water, if it looks too liquidy, leave the saucepan lid off and let it boil out. Mine looks just about right. There doesn't seem to be too much water in there, so I'm going to keep the lid on just to keep that flavour in for the moment. And I'm going to wait. I'm going to use a spatula and just make sure that these potatoes aren't sticking and making sure that there is plenty of oil all the way around the bottom of the pan so that none of the potatoes are going to stick to the bottom of the pan. Okay, and we're going to just wait for the rice to boil up, and hopefully within the next 10 minutes or so our potatoes should be golden all the way over and nice and crispy. Use the spatula just to turn them every couple of minutes, just to make sure that they're covered in oil all the way around and that they're crisping off evenly all the way around. Okay, so we've been cooking the potatoes, we've been shallow frying them for roughly about 5 or 10 minutes now. They should be looking quite crisp on some of the edges. We need to just make sure that they're crispy all the way through and they're cooked all the way through. You can see there, they're looking really nice. They're looking quite crispy all over. Hopefully by the time they're done, our rice will be done. Our rice pretty much looks there, so just going to wait a couple more minutes. stir the curry, make sure that that's still of a good consistency, that it's still not too thin. My curry now has started to thin out slightly, so there's a little bit more water. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the lid off. We're not going to use that anymore. We're going to let some of the water boil out and let some of those flavours be released. Hopefully, most of the flavours that we've got in there are trapped within the meats and the vegetables. Like I say, just make sure that you keep on turning the potatoes if you're shallow frying them, so that they're covered in oil all the way around. Hopefully the rice should be good. So what we're going to do, don't touch the rice whilst you're cooking it. Little trick, just let it do its thing. Put it on, boil it, let it be. Don't try forking through it. The more that you turn the rice, the more you're adding to more starch to it. It doesn't do it any favours whatsoever. We're going to get a sieve. We're going to put the rice through the sieve, like that. Okay, and then we're going to use cold water. Straight away, we're going to stop that cooking process with the rice. If it's left warm, if it's left in hot boiling water, what will happen is it will continue on cooking, and you're just going to get that starchy kind of sludge. It's not particularly nice. I'm no expert at it. I don't get it right all the time. We're just going to let that cool down. We're going to let that drain off. Okay, I'm just going to leave that to drain off in there for a little while. Okay, our potatoes are starting to crisp off really nicely now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take them out and let them rest. So we're going to get a plate. Going to get some kitchen roll. Okay, and we're going to get some of these potatoes. They're looking quite crispy all over now. They're looking good. We're just going to take them out individually and we're going to lay them on top. Let some of the oil absorb into the tissue so that it's not so oily, so that it's still nice and fresh. Okay, so got that sorted now. So our rice should be cooling off. Should have cooled down almost completely now. I'm just going to check our curry. Make sure all of the hobs are switched off, apart from the ones that you're using. Turn it down a little bit. Okay, so the curry now has started to thicken up. Now that I've taken the lid off, there's not so much water in there. It looks really juicy and lovely. Okay, so all that's going off, ready to serve. So we're going to serve rice with some curry, with some Bombay potatoes, and see how it goes. Okay, so now we're going to serve up. We're ready to serve. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our rice. We're going to take a fork, and we're just going to literally take the sieve, take the fork, and just run the fork through the sieve, just to separate out that rice, so that it's not so clumpy. So there shouldn't be too many clumps in there. Hopefully that cooking process has stopped now, so the rice has stopped cooking. It's not going to stick together. Okay, and as you can see there, the fork's moving quite easily through it. Okay, and there shouldn't be any pieces, large pieces stuck together. If there are, just quickly run the fork over it to separate it out. Okay, we're going to place the rice in the middle of the plate like that. We're going to use the back of the fork that we've just been using just to make a little dip in there, so we can rest our curry and our curry sauce in there. Now, I'm going to use a slotted spoon to start with. That's just so that I can get some of the more of the meatier parts out. I'm going to just lay that on top there, like that. So we've got a lovely, juicy, spicy, hot curry there. Okay. And I'm going to use a pair of tongs. Take some of these Bombay potato wedges off. Lay them across there. Like that. And then I'm going to get just a normal spoon. I'm going to get some of this curry sauce that's left over. Hopefully there should be quite a lot left since I use a slotted spoon. And just put over some of this lovely curry sauce that we've got left over here. Okay, right, we're going to make sure all of our hobs off, make sure there's no other cooking equipment out. And the final touch, so there we go, there's our curry, Bombay potatoes. That's just long grain rice. You can use all different kinds of varieties of rice. Long grain rice is just really easy to cook. It's one of the easiest to cook. And so there we go, there's our Bombay potatoes, there's our curry, there's our rice. I don't have any naan breads, I don't have any pittas, so just a loaf of bread will do, a couple of slices of bread, just so that we can use it to mop up some of that lovely curry sauce. And there we go. James's hot and spicy curry with Bombay style potatoes. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I hope that you enjoy cooking, and take care, and I'm sure we'll see each other again.